9:28 or 7:28.
Oh, you can relax, David. You got 2 minutes till showtime.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me? Anybody at the Zoom meeting, can you hear me?
They're all muted.
Yes,
Can you-
we can hear you.
Okay,
Great,
good,
thank you.
I hear you.
good.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming. Everybody who's on Zoom, very interesting subject tonight. There'll be some new things come out in this lecture. Haven't really been talked about on a public forum that I know of, unless it was done by Dr. Douglas Baker. But tonight's title is The Third Eye. Techniques for Opening the Third Eye might be a better title, but this is the book that Dr. Baker wrote. That's the front of the book. This is the head of Minerva over here, which is also displayed down here. Can they see this, Tracy?
Yeah.
The head of Minerva.
I'll angle
So it
down.
might be a good idea if we started out and said something about the head of Minerva from the writings of Manly Palmer Hall, one of the great esoteric teachers of the world, who was also curiously a very good friend of Dr. Baker. I've been out to Manly Hall's Philosophical Research Society with Baker to meet Manly Hall. An extraordinary event in my life. Anyway, this painting of Minerva, hopefully they can see that, okay? This painting, in the words of Manly Hall, the painting of the head of Minerva, shows in part the activities of the pineal gland and the pituitary body at the time of the phenomena commonly termed the opening of the third eye. Manly Hall says that the Kundalini fire is seen rising upward through the spinal canal into the pons of the mandala oblongata. The golden light radiating from the base of the brain at the back gradually increases in size and intensity until it forms the nimbus, the halo nimbus, we call it, of the saint. The pituitary body is here shown surrounded by an elliptic rose aura. It's this rose aura here, but the actual radiations are often seen in powerful mystics as the halo nimbus, which is portrayed in a lot of early Christian paintings and iconography. The significant thing about what Manly Hall says in his explanation is he says it shows in part. It only tells you a part of the story. There's more to the story than what Manly Hall was, I would assume, allowed to tell you. But anyway, we're going to talk about the unspoken or unmentionable aspects of the opening of the third eye, which is a safe teaching, a safe way to open the eye. And we're also going to talk about the construction as an added feature to this lecture on the construction of the Antakarana, the rainbow bridge, as it's sometimes called. It's a bridge of consciousness between the mind and the soul. Roberto Assagioli, was one of Alice Bailey's prize students. If you know anything about Assagioli, he talked about personality integration, which means the soul, the personality and the soul are merged, and through great effort, I might add. In the Bible, it says that the lamp of the body is the eye. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, then thy whole body shall be full of light. And he was talking about the activation of the head centers, which include the throat, the brow, and the crown. So you have three head centers, which we're going to talk about tonight. Not too many people are aware of this, and we want to make sure that we're clear on what constitutes the third eye. In order to understand any part of this lecture tonight, we have to know, as students of the esoteric, what we call the true nature of matter. That matter is an emptiness, that the world about us is Maya, or an illusion, that all is energy, that time is flexible, the interpretations of its passage being decided by states of consciousness, which changes in meditation. Our sensory equipment is defective, or at the best, unreliable. So we have to be careful as we perceive things, because as we enter the path and our consciousness begins to be stimulated, and we begin to have experiences, both in this world, I'll give an example later, and in the inner worlds, we begin to blend the two is one of the things that happens. Not so much from the eye itself opening, but rather from the construction of the Antakarana. All is energy and vibration. The energy of mind and emotions is interchangeable with the densest object. Blavatsky said that matter was spirit at the lowest end of the formation, and that spirit was matter at the highest end of the spectrum. So the lowest end of the spectrum is matter, and the highest is spirit. She said that these two are synthesized by life, which pervades all things, that there's actually a life wave. We may talk about it later in this lecture tonight if we get to the experience of J.B. Priestley. I think it's in this lecture, but I'm not real sure. There it is. In Priestley's dream vision, they were banding birds on the Isle of Wight, and he had this incredible superconscious experience. It can be any kind of an experience. But he said that in his writings, he said, but now in some mysterious fashion, time was changed. He was watching these birds, just millions, and he said possibly all of the birds in the world were flying.
The bigger
down
piece.
this corridor. What?
Mute.
You thought it was dangerous.
Excuse me, could you please
Can you
mute?
please mute? Thank you. But now, by some mysterious fashion, time has changed and time speeded up, so that I saw generations of birds. And he said, as he looked out across the horizon, he saw this incredible display of every imaginable bird flying by. And they would be born, and then they would live, and then they would die. But through them passed a flame. There was an actual, what he thought was a flame, which is really the life wave passing through this incredible spectacle of the birds, the bird evolution, living, being born, living and dying en masse. Incredible experience. This is one of Escher's drawings here. He was a absolutely fourth ray guy, artist, who did these incredible drawings. And this really explains perfectly the dream vision of J.B. Priestley, himself a fifth degree initiate, took the fifth degree initiation in that life as a poet. Many Irish and English poets of the 1800s took the fifth initiation, believe it or not, through the writing of their poetry. This is a graph that was in Baker's book on the electromagnetic spectrum, and it shows the man's deficient sensory equipment immersed within it. So we can't, the average person can't comprehend the ultraviolet range or the gamma range, but we do know quite a bit about the physical earth and all of the closely related substrata to the earth. But the higher worlds we're only learning about. The control of heredity through the permanent atom. Each of us has a monad, which is expressing itself as a soul. We have a permanent atom, and that permanent atom reincarnates from life to life. And sometimes, if we have evolved under a favorable system of growth, we'll have remembrances of previous lives. Many people nowadays do. They have memories. I could remember dying in World War II when I was a little boy, maybe three or 4 years old. But it helped me on the path to the esoteric and to my own spiritual life and development. And so we say that in the logo himself, in the logoic plane, is what we call the first spirili. In the atmic level, just below the logoic, is the second spirili. The third spirili is on the Buddhic plane. The monastic higher and lower levels of the monastic are the fourth spirili. The astral world is the fifth spirili, and the physical is the sixth spirili. And all of these are simultaneously in existence, but we're usually only aware maybe of the lower three. Some of us are aware of higher mental or higher monastic plane. Buddhic plane oftentimes will express itself as intuition. The atmic plane, difficult for me to comprehend it, but certainly with the first spirili of the logoic, you would be one with the unit, one with our solar system. We'll say that. This drawing on the right was a drawing that was envisioned through a psychic experience at a very high level of consciousness by a man by the name of Dr. Babbitt in the late 1800s. I think he was a doctor in New York City. And he drew what he believed, and I believe it's accurate, of what the Anu, or the permanent physical atom, looks like. It's interesting because it correlates very powerfully with the muscles and the structure, the grain of the muscles in the heart are similar, and that the heart would make perfect occult or esoteric sense, that the dissection of this heart would show the course of the fibers and the similarity of the Anu to the form of the mammalian heart. So it's by design, by cosmic design, that the permanent atom is aping itself through the structure of especially of the human heart. The oxygen molecule over here is showing vitality globules, and there are 7 of these globules in each of the oxygen molecules. They correspond to the 7 rays, interestingly. And that's why the breathing exercises are so important that we practice. A lot of us do what we call the bellows breath. I think we talked about it last week in techniques of astral projection. That by breathing like the bellows of a blacksmith's forge and forcing more oxygen into your lungs, you're also forcing more oxygen and more prana into your body and into your lungs, strengthening and in many ways healing yourself from some illnesses. So it's a good thing to remember, and it makes you like a champion prize fighter in the astral world. We say that there is our physical body, which we know a great deal about, but it's surrounded by an etheric counterpart, which is also surrounded and interpenetrated. These are all interpenetrating the physical body, the astral or emotional body, and then the higher mental and spiritual bodies are what compose the human aura. I've drawn it here many times over the years in various lectures, but we'll do it again in future lectures. I just am not equipped to do it here tonight, but the graph explains that there's more to us than just a physical body, and that's the point that we want to make. Each of us has this miniature sun within or above him, a replica of the true sun, a son of the Father, a spark of the flame divine, which we call the soul. We're souls having a worldly, earthly experience, as many of the New Agers say, and it's absolutely correct that we are spiritual beings. I think it was, could have been Pythagoras who said thousands of years ago that we are gods in the making. We are a minute aspect through the monad of the one being, and that we ourselves one day will become even bigger gods. We will ensoul planets, we will ensoul solar systems, we will ensoul galaxies. That's the way it works. Greater and greater expanse of consciousness and a overlording or an oversouling of entities and bodies greater than ourselves. It's a fantastic concept and true. This is Plato's cave. It was one of the favorite topics at Claregate in England, where a man is chained, Plato said, but we're all human beings, and it's like we're chained to a wall, and there's a flame or a light behind us, and it's casting our shadows out on the wall, and we're forced to sit there, limited by our physical equipment, to see the shadows on the wall, and that we assume that the shadow being is who we really are, but it isn't. The shadow being is the soul, the monad, which is the soul divine, and that the light shining forth is the one eternal light or being, the sun, for example, and that what we have to do is alter our consciousness and our perspective on what we are and who we are. And we are multifaceted beings, and we are all evolving into higher and higher awarenesses. This is an interesting graphic. It explains the significance of the overlapping of the three head centers and the emergence in the center where all three of these are merged together, creates a lens or a screen that is in reality the third eye. So when Manly Hall said in his painting of Minerva, which we see up here in the corner, he explains only in part what is happening. I don't think it was his to give out. If it was his to give out, he would have given it out. But he never talked about the overlapping. Alice Bailey did to some extent. But that's what it is. It's not the pineal gland. It's not the pituitary body. It's a combination of energies that are brought in to these chakras, which include the throat, the brow, and the crown, the three spheres represented here. And where these meet is what Manly Hall down here, if you can see this blue, it's a kind of a side view of the sacred square inch, which is a electric blue triangle right here, where you would expect the third eye to be. Thanks, Tracy. So it's very important to remember that. It's interesting that in the Theosophical Society, the people have always talked about having I've always reading the esoteric classics, that reading and study was very important. Meditation, obviously, meditation, very important, but also being of service to mankind. These three energies that we're expending create three vortices that draw in energies that overlap in these head centers that create this right here, which is the third eye. All eyes require a lens. So you have to create the lens to have the third eye. It isn't just the pineal gland. It isn't just the pituitary gland. It's way more than that. Those may be a part of it. They are a part of it. But the integral and important aspect of it is to be able to discipline yourself, whereby you're doing three very important things: study, meditation, and service to mankind. And this is the safest and the easiest way. I can remember when I was a young guy back before I went to Vietnam, people using drugs. They were just beginning, nothing like nowadays, but they were experimenting with psychedelics. I don't think they do too much of that now. It's much more debased than even then. But people would have these psychedelic experiences with mescaline, peyote. I can remember they used to have the American Indian Conference in Fort Wayne, Indiana, down in one of the big parks along the river. And the American Indians were they'd sell peyote necklaces for $2.
Oh, boy.
And all the hippies would go down and buy the $2 peyote necklace, have it for lunch, and they'd have these incredible out-of-body experiences that were just extraordinary. And they used to sit around and talk about it. I never did that, of course, but I had a lot of friends who did. And that was just the time that we were living in, where the psychedelics, LSD, mescaline, you name it. And some people just did all of them. This is an interesting graph here too, because it's telling us, it's explaining the 7 levels of the physical plane. And of course, the lowest of the physical is the solid, and then the liquid, and then the gas, and then the ionic, subatomic, neutrino, and electron, which are more a part of the etheric. But the etheric is merged with the physical, and it is part of these 7 planes that are so important to our physical existence. It's a real good graphic. And, this again shows the human aura, showing both a vortex and a torrent. And it's very true, because when fire experiences are to be had, you are firstly aware of this incredible cosmic energy entering through the top of the head, and then it passes all down through your body and right out through the feet, almost as if it was following the vagus nerve, which I believe it is to a certain extent, but it's more than that even. But this body, the human aura, is composed of etheric, astral, mental material. It's known as the auric egg or the causal body. And it's a part of who we are. And so the old injunction of the Oracle of Delphi was, man, know thyself. And it meant exactly this: know who and what you really are. You're a soul in a physical body, but you have equipment that is subtle and is super sensitive to the invisible worlds. It's a part of the invisible worlds, just like dark matter and dark energy. Or I wish we had a graph of what is being called a black hole. We could incorporate that into this lecture. When the head chakras are invented, are opened, integrated, when the head centers are fully functioning, Leadbeater said that in the future, mystics and initiates who have opened their head centers, the radiation will be so powerful that they'll be able to take unripened fruit and hold it within the orbit of their third eye and the energies emanating from the head centers, and ripen the fruit in almost instantaneously, ripen fruit by holding the unripened fruit within the range of the head. It's an interesting thought. I believe it's true. I don't know anybody who's done it, but I know people that have done some incredible things. The third eye is not an etheric chakra. It is related to the three head centers. We've discussed that to some extent. The crown center, the pineal gland, the ajna center, the pituitary body, and the ultra major center, which is the carotid body, or also the throat chakra. And when these are opened and functioning, the lens will be created out here, as we showed you in earlier images. It's the overlapping. You have to create the lens. All eyes require a lens. So somehow or other, this being the safest way, you can open your third eye safely. I can remember being a young kid and going to Chicago with my grandfather to see my Uncle Ted. And my Uncle Ted and I were in a cab somewhere going someplace. I don't even remember. It might have been it was over on the west side someplace. Anyway, we went through a really rough part of town, and it was full of winos. And the winos were suffering from the DTs, delirium tremens. And the DTs are really a product of, through alcoholic abuse, any kind of abuse will cause psychic experience. I'll tell you another story in just a minute, but we're in the taxi, and I'm watching these guys out in the street, and these guys were just really a sad bunch. And I remember a guy screaming and yelling at a wall. He was this brick wall, and he was just screaming and yelling and flailing his hands, and I wondered even then, what does he see that I don't see? He's obviously seeing something there. But what happens is that when drugs and alcohol are used, the head centers are not opened evenly and succinctly, and it causes distortions in perception. And that's when you get things like delirium tremens. I can remember guys, when I got back from Vietnam, I had about 3 months left in the Army. I was down at Fort Meade, halfway between Washington and Baltimore. And I had a couple of guys that were in my outfit that were acid heads, and they were just always doing acid. And they used to have a thing that they called back in those days, they would refer to someone that was burnt out. You were burnt out. And it means that they did too much acid. And what happens is, one of the physiological things that happens is the pupil of the eye becomes very large and just black. The eyes, when you look in their eyes, it's just you're looking into this hole. It's extraordinary.
Hole of the soul.
Yeah, yeah. And what they've done is they've burnt the nadis, so that the slang term, part of the collective consciousness, which was very accurate, said that these guys were burnt out. And what happens when you do acid, excuse me, and mescaline and really powerful hallucinogenic drugs, is you burn the etheric filaments between the nadis and the chakras. The filaments supply the energy to the chakras, so the chakras then are diminished in their potency because you burnt the wiring. It's like burning up. It's like put 240 volts in your a television set when it can only take 120, or some electrical device fries it. So they're etherically, they've fried themselves. So, and the really horrific thing about doing that is that what happens is it may take 3 or 4 lives for your etheric body to rebuild itself, to restructure itself, because of the damage that you've done to your etheric equipment. Finding the third eye involves much the same problem as a man seeking his spectacles. When he is short-sighted, he needs the spectacles to find them. So you need to have knowledge. That's one of the reasons why Dr. Baker wrote this book. You need to have knowledge of the third eye. I never really knew anybody in my life that had a sound, concrete knowledge of the third eye until I met Douglas Baker. Like I say, Bailey alluded to it, and Blavatsky herself was at the highest end of the spectrum. She was a conscious medium. We'll talk about that maybe a little later too, which comes about through the construction of the Antakarana. And believe me, once that's done, the whole world changes. You won't ever look at the world really the same ever again. So yeah, the more knowledge you have of the astral world, the etheric world, or planes we call them, the more you can read up on the third eye by reputable people. Leadbeater, Bailey, Baker, I would recommend those books for the serious student. The neophyte must undergo a personality change, and what that involves, also the byproduct of that, is the reconstruction of the human aura. This is a picture of Douglas Baker with his friend Roberto Assagioli in Florence, Italy, about 1960. And Baker was just finishing medical school, and he had gone to study with Assagioli in Florence as part of his work. And it was, as I had mentioned earlier, Assagioli who talked about psychosynthesis, and that means merging the soul and the personality merging together. It's the symbol, we may have it in future graphs here, of the Star of David. There are two triangles that have passed into one another, one ascending, one descending. The higher and the lower worlds blended together is the real significance of the Star of David. I'll have some information on it, on that in a later lecture, and the significance of the tetrahedron in relationship to the Star of David and its structures. So here's a good diagram here for the building of the Antakarana. We have three tracks, then etheric substance. We have what we call Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna. Three, and they are the basis of the caduceus. You see Mercury on the book up there on the wall there, the Esoteric Healing, Volume 1, shows Mercury, and Mercury usually carries this caduceus with him. And the caduceus is, of course, are these three spinal tracks, usually with an acorn at the top, or in this case here, the 1,000-petaled lotus, which is a good example of the true structure, the etheric structure of man with the seven chakras, the base of the spine, the 4-petaled lotus, the 6-petaled lotus, the sacral center, the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra, the throat, the brow, and the crown, the 1,000-petaled lotus. There's an interesting correlation here I always talk to people about, because if you were to study the great star Sirius, the head center of a cosmic being in which we live and move and are a part of, our solar system is a part of, that the great star Sirius is not one gigantic star. It is a grouping of 1,000 sun-like, sun-sized stars, maybe more than that. Some say 10,000 suns have been drawn together through, which implies magnetism. That magnetism has pulled these stars together, and that is the head center of this immense being about whom nothing can be said, of whom naught may be said. So it has a lotus, a many 1,000-petaled lotus for its head structure, the same as human beings have the 1,000-petaled lotus of Sahasrara, the crowning glory, we say, of mankind, of human beings. The direction of all energies of the lower vehicles and of the higher self into the head region. Now this is showing the Antakarana with the higher and the lower triplicity. And what we want to do is blend those two together. It creates the Star of David when psychosynthesis the merging of the soul and the personality has taken place through many incarnations and through a lot of effort. And it's this construction that's so important because it leads to conscious mediumship, which is a higher form of knowing than mere clairvoyance. That when you can construct the antakarana also through reading and study and discipline, keeping a spiritual diary. Keeping a spiritual diary is of tremendous importance because what it does is it allows you to make contact with your soul or your higher self. And once that's done, the dreams become interpretable. You can be interpreting your dreams even as you're having them. I've done it many times under very difficult situations. So it can happen. If I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it. I can do it. It takes effort. And if you don't put any effort toward it, you won't have any results. So you have to really discipline yourself. For me, it was fasting, celibacy. I threw the television in the dumpster, didn't watch TV for years and years and years. Vegetarian diet. It was purifying myself. And so I was making myself receptive to the invisible worlds. I don't say that you have to do that all your life, but it's a good discipline to practice for anybody who is trying to spiritualize their life and who is trying to reconstruct their aura. Very important, these disciplines. And one of the things that will happen, I'll tell a story out of school, but you'll blend the two worlds together. You'll blend your dream life and the real physical world together. You won't really be able to tell the difference. And I don't mean that you can't tell the difference. I mean that it all has meaning, that your dream life has meaning and the events in your physical life will have meaning. So here was a story a thing that I experienced at a very critical time in my own spiritual development. And the event that happened was just an everyday event. I was at a big shopping mall and I went into a huge department store on the first floor. And I stood in the center of the floor. Had just reached the exact center of that floor. And as I looked to my right, which was the south end of the building, it was all glass windows, summertime, a guy walked up to the door and ran right into it and shattered the door. He wasn't hurt, but he shattered the glass because the sunlight was shining in such a way that he apparently thought the door was open and he couldn't see, like birds will fly into your windows, you know. So I thought, well, that was, golly, it was odd and unusual. I'm glad nobody was hurt. There were people there at the south end of the store to attend to him. Exactly a week later, at the same time, 7:00 in the evening in the summer, I was in the same spot, in the same location, in the same store. And I looked to my left, which was the north, and here came a guy right up to the door and walked right into the glass and shattered the glass.
Twice?
Yeah. What does that mean? And I realized in my higher mind, my esoteric self, that the illusion of the physical world was being shattered, and that there may be a direct causation because these things do happen. A direct causation between my own inner growth objectifying itself in the outer world in a symbolic way. And the guy walked right into the door, just like the guy did a week earlier at the same time at the south end of the store, shattered the glass, wasn't really hurt. He had a little cut on his hand. And I was obviously taken back by the experience. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. We're given signposts on the path. Strange things will happen to you, and you have to note. You have to write them in your spiritual diary when they happen. You have to write them in your spiritual diary because they're just as powerful, maybe more so, than the dream visions or the lucograms that you see. I've told you all about the lucigram that I had the night I met Dr. Baker at the Festival of Yoga and Science in Columbus, Ohio. And the image that I saw in my dream, this is after years of recording my dreams in a spiritual diary, writing down all these incredible things that were happening in my life in the outer world, as well as the inner world experiences. But in this dream that night, I saw the midnight sky, and then as I looked at the midnight sky, there was a flashing of an electric blue light or image of each of the 12 signs of the zodiac that began to appear in a circle, and then they began to rotate and evolve. And then in the center of it, I saw another image, which was the Eye of Horus. And 14 years, I never told anybody about the dream. About 12 or 14 years later, might have been 14 years later, Baker had asked for me to help fund a film they were making on the horoscope of John F. Kennedy Jr. And of course, I was eager to help in any way I could. And so I began to send money to England for this creation of this video, which we have here. And to my surprise, when I put the video in, the very first image was the image of my lucigram I saw 14 years earlier on the night I met Douglas Baker. It was the midnight sky, and it was the astrological glyphs appearing in sequence, starting with Aries and moving all the way around the entire wheel of the zodiac. I was taken back by that because I had seen that exact image 14 years earlier. Never told anybody about it. Never mentioned it to a soul. I never told Douglas Baker about it. There it was. So you look for signposts on the path because they're telling you something. A sign is being given to you. It's part of your spiritual growth and your development. So you have to look for them. If you don't look for them, you won't find them. You have to look for them. And if you're really disciplining yourself and you're trying to spiritualize your life, if you're trying to reconstruct your aura, a lot of times you'll have events like that will take place. Here he's talking about, we're talking about the reconstruction of the aura, and energy follows thought. The first maxim of esoteric healing, of the 20 maxims of esoteric healing, which I'll be speaking on at a spiritualist church here in the Detroit area, probably within the month. The very first maxim is energy follows thought. But it's not only true for just healing, but it's true of everyday living, of everything that you do, energy follows thought. And so it's important to remember that, of what kind of energy you're creating through your thought forms. Can be both constructive and can be destructive. These are the planes, we've shown them before, but we'll go through them again. The logoic plane, the source from whence all things flow. The monadic plane, which we are a product of. We are monads, 63,000 million monads, or 63 billion monads, or souls divine, are using the earth chain as a vehicle of expression. So we have a little over 7 billion people in physical form, and these other billions of people, 56 billion people, are in somewhere in this range, evolving and moving through this wheel of rebirth, we call it, through a wheel of rebirth. Probably up mostly to the atmic plane, but a few higher. And our earth is blessed by these souls who aspire to these higher regions or realms. Again, we mentioned here the Rainbow Bridge, the Antakarana, and the importance of its construction. If you can do two things in your life, that you would want to do. One of them would be you would want to construct the third eye, but you would want to construct the Antakarana. And I believe that it's the combination of these two things, two vehicles of awareness, that transform you as a human being. It's incredible, the experiences that happen. They're not daily. Sometimes they are, it seems that way, but you'll have long periods where you won't have any experiences. I saw the World Trade Towers implode 10 days before it actually happened. The morning of the September 11th, I had astrally projected to the southern tip of Manhattan, and I saw what I thought were two tornado clouds, but they were in fact the destruction of the World Trade Towers. They're in my dream journal, so they're recorded. But you have those kind of conscious mediumship experiences. Conscious mediumship is the ultimate form of knowing, when you know through conscious mediumship. And it's something that can be taught. This is not a real good graphic. It's supposed to explain, again, part of the Rainbow Bridge, but it shows an auric egg of a human being, and this soul star says is obscured by idealized thought forms, but your auric egg is composed of your thought forms. Again, energy follows thought. And if you can keep your thoughts at a higher level for the majority of the day, you've done a good thing. What time is it? Got the
8:18.
8:18. So we're going to have to close real quick. Again, here's the relationship of these chakras, showing the base chakra at the base of the spine and its correlation to the head center, the sacral chakra to the throat chakra, and the heart chakra to ajna, and then eventually the heart chakra up to the ajna. Well, we said that. The heart chakra to ajna. The ajnasarians are those who have opened their head centers. And Bailey talks about it in her books to some degree. Here's the energy follow thoughts. This is a picture by Leadbeater and Annie Besant of sudden fright, what the energy looks like coming from the astral body of a human being, and probably similar in the lower kingdoms of this startling energy shooting out. Energy follows thought. This is the basic principle of occult development. And then these exercises, energy of a higher quality is directed to the region in front of the forehead. So I don't know if that exercise is in here. Let's see. Yeah, we talked about that. These are eye exercises. The thing that's significant here is the third eye on the pyramid of a $1 bill. There is no country in the world that I know of that has a more occult symbol than the American $1 bill. If you think this country was created by accident, you are an absolute fool. This country was created by divine guidance and is meant to lead us into the new Renaissance in 2025. That's 4 years from now. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 years, but I'm going to tell you, it is going to be absolutely breathtaking and significant beyond your wildest dreams, both good and bad. These were the eye exercises that you're supposed to do that help open the eye. And what you do, you can only do these for just a very brief period each day, but it's extending your eyes upward as high as you can and as low as you can, and to the left and the right. So as high, as low, to the left, to the right, or vice versa, to the right and to the left would be for the person in the image. But they're important exercises. And Baker said you should try to do this for about 10 days, but you don't do it for extended periods of time. As your eyes muscles get used to it, then you can do it more often. It's not the image I wanted. This is a good thing, though. This is very valuable. And I have found this to be absolutely true. Candle flame focus meditation practice. I do it all the time. Only I use one of those Tibetan salt lamps, but I use candles for years. I'm telling you, as God is my witness, I had instantaneous results the first time I ever meditated, and I used a candle. And a candle is a good focus thing. A lot of times I'll put the candle on the floor in my meditation room. I haven't used candles for a couple of years, maybe 3 years, because I bought this Tibetan salt lamp, which I like. It has a diffuse light, a glow to it, and I can adjust it. It's got a little rheostat on it, and it works really well. I like it. So either way, try a candle, put it down 3 or 4 or 5 feet out in front of, on the floor, in a dark room where you meditate. Absolutely a very helpful image and object to have in your meditation. This is a really an important one. I was doing it earlier today. I hadn't done it in a long time. But if you put your fingers about 6 inches apart, I'm doing it right now, and out in front of you at a certain distance, you can see the third finger in the middle. I'm seeing it right now. I see 3 fingers as I'm looking out. I'm not looking at my fingers. I'm looking at the space in between the 2 fingers. And this occurs. This is supposed to be a kind of an occult exercise that will help you focus your energy here, where your third eye is. And the more you practice it, the more easily you can do it. You have to get the distance about right. There it is right there. I can see 3 fingers just like the image shows. But it focuses concentration then on this region, which is what you want to do. The trick is to get them the right distance and to look in between them, and you'll see. There they are, three fingers.
It's supposed to be about 6 inches, I think. from the
Yeah,
eye.
it's probably about
Six.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he says in 6 inches apart.
Hmm.
So that's about 6 inches, but yeah, you have to get them kind of close,
Just
right
think
there.
about right where the lens is when
Yeah,
you see it.
right about-
It's like right about there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good one. Good exercise. Signpost, we talked about this, of spiritual unfoldment, increased metabolic rate, sensitivity to light and sound, sensitivity also to drugs, aspirins even, diseases of discipleship, clairaudience, visual disturbances of circadian rhythms, synesthesia, which is the overlapping of the senses, where you can hear color or see sound. That's synesthesia, the overlapping of it's becoming a whole new science that's being taught in some colleges. Clairvoyance, variable libido, hypoglycemia, you see your own inner light, electrical feelings under the tongue, you can actually feel. In fact, many in certain forms of Kriya Yoga, the disciple will, in the meditation process, touch the tongue to the roof of the mouth, because the pineal gland is just above the roof of the mouth. And you make a connection symbolically and physiologically to the esoteric anatomy of the body, to the roof of the mouth, which, like I say, just on the other side is the pineal gland. So these are very important things. Some people may want to write these down. Sensitivity to light and sound, increased metabolic rate, diseases of discipleship. Hypoglycemia is a disease of discipleship. Often for many, so is schizophrenia. It's very hard to distinguish between some schizophrenics and some disciples, because they're experiencing the invisible worlds. I have a sister, life is just the most tragic story you can imagine, who was diagnosed at age 18 as a paranoid schizophrenic, has been on psychiatric medication all of her life. She's 77 years old, almost a vegetable, because they sedate them, and they have no treat. They don't know how to treat it. See, so they just give them drugs, because that's a large part of what modern medicine is drugging people. And she's usually at her best when her drugs are at a minimum. So did everybody get an image of that on your phones that wanted it? Okay, we're almost done. Yeah, here, this is really an important symbol here. Here again is the dollar bill and the all-seeing eye on the unfinished pyramid in the desert of materialism of America. But this symbol over here of Uranus is important, because when this is reversed and is at the top and this is at the bottom, it's a symbol of a man who has raised his consciousness up to Sahasrara, to the top of the head centers. And Uranus or Uranus does that. It's the symbol in Blavatsky's drawing she did of the human face, with the astrological signs as the right eye is is Venus, and the left eye is Mercury, the right nostril is the sun, the moon is the left nostril, the mouth is Saturn, and the third eye is Uranus. And it's inverted where the yin yang is at the top. And it has a powerful symbolism. That's the end of the lecture. I'll take questions. If they can unmute, you can unmute them.
Yeah, you
Thank you,
can.
David.
We got a couple of things. We have a couple of questions.
Thank you.
go ahead if you would like to ask something. You can.
Yeah, if you want to
unmute
ask a
yourself.
question.
Okay, I was waiting to
Let's
see
do-
if, this is Christine.
Okay.
I was waiting to see if someone else may have a question. Um, gosh, I so went with it all. I'm sure everybody did. I live very much like that, and I'd like to share something that kind of seems fitting at this point. How I found you, David. I didn't know you existed. At least not in the physical. Anyway, I was talking to some, as we know, our machines are to us all the time. And I was talking to someone, and I was trying to think of the person's name. I knew it started, his last name. I knew it started with a Z, and I couldn't think of it, but I said Zimmerman. And I knew it was wrong even when I said it, but somehow it rung for me. And the very next day on Facebook, there you were.
Oh. Well, there are no accidents where the divine law is concerned.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. Oh, no,
So Christine, what's your last name?
Janowski.
Where are you from?
Originally, I'm from Michigan, but I'm down in Georgia for the last 35 years or so.
Oh, yeah, okay. I have a good
And
friend.
I'm
What?
from Detroit, born and raised in Detroit originally.
Yeah, good. When
Anyway,
you get up this way, come up and see me. I'm in Rochester Hills.
oh, wow.
I'm on Facebook.
Yes.
Make a
I see
trip.
one. But I'd like to ask a question also.
Yeah.
Gosh, there was so much in tonight and I loved it all. But this may seem like a silly question. I don't really know. And I've never given it much thought until recently. But are all souls created all at the same time? Or are they continuing to be created?
No, they're continuing to be created. And they're not just on the earth plane. You know, there's many galaxies and billions of galaxies, and life pervades the entire universe. But some souls are evolving, some are new souls, some are
Okay.
middle-aged souls, some are old souls.
Well, so for the earth chain though, were all of those created at the same time? Or are they also
No,
So
the
there
earth
is-
chain, no, there was a group of them that were, and I don't know how many it was in the initial output
Yeah, wait.
in the life wave, but they mostly came from the moon chain, many of them,
Oh,
but not all of them. But a lot of them came from the moon chain when there was life on the moon, but others were formed and conceived, if that's the proper word to use, here on Earth, evolved on the Earth chain. I talked about it in one of my lectures where we talked about, it was the lecture on the moon. Some of you might remember the lecture on the moon.
I don't think I heard it.
Yeah, well, it's on YouTube, I believe. So if you go to YouTube, Esoteric Lectures, David Zimmerman, there's one about the moon and its relationship to the earth. And you'll find it very interesting. Is there
Yeah.
anybody else that has any questions?
Thank you.
Anybody else with a question? Can they hear us?
Yeah, if you have a question, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute if you want to ask a question, because we've only got just a couple minutes here.
Well, I could ask another question.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Make sure it's a question,
okay.
not a story.
Wondering if it is harder to move from, which in your opinion or such, from the solar plexus to the heart chakra.
Oh, yeah.
It seems to me I see a lot of people get stuck in the solar plexus that are trying
Yeah.
to move.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Okay, I guess that's it for this evening. What time do we have, Tracy? Was it 20 till
It's 8:34.
8:30?
Oh, so we did our part.
So that's good. Okay, well, thanks, folks. Tune in next week. I'm not sure what the topic's gonna be, but I'll post it next Monday or Tuesday. And if you can, make sure you get on the Zoom link. You can request it from me through Facebook if you're not on. Tell your friends. We're always trying to help more and more people all the time. So thanks a lot.
Thank you
David.
so much.
David.
All right,
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, David.
All right, thank you. Wednesday.